Hey everyone, welcome to Canivision, Illinois, where we talk about business, medical, and lifestyle topics with some of the leaders here in the Illinois cannabis market. Canivision is a decentralized broadcasting network for the cannabis industry, and we are here representing Illinois for the Midwest region.
We're your hosts, Hush Chicago. I'm Kay.
And I'm Vanessa.
And today we're going to be discussing how you can strategically navigate the cannabis industry from the ground up. And today, seated at the Hush Circle is none other than Winston McCaulley. Yes. So Winston is the CEO of Haze Cannabis. He's a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the NCIA. That's the National Cannabis Industry Association. And he's also the Minority Access Committee member for CBAI. And Winston is also a social equity applicant for the cultivation, infusion, and transportation license. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
We're so happy.
We're so honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, let's kick it off with the first question. We ask all of our guests this, but tell us a little bit more about you and what you're doing right now in the cannabis space.
Yeah, so you already spoke to the applications that we submitted for craft grower, infuser, and transporter. We're actually working on some of our long-term plans and going through a real estate acquisition phase. And in addition to that, we're working with the leaders in the Illinois cannabis space to do what we can to move forward with getting licenses awarded, because at the end of the day, the goal is to get social equity applicants licenses as soon as possible so they can get their businesses and operations up and running.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
And we definitely want to go more into detail on that.
For sure.
But first, we want to ask, what was your first experience with cannabis? And what is that relationship like now?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I'm not sure I remember my first experience with cannabis, but what I do remember is early on, around the age of 15, still in high school, I remember having conversations in the back seat while riding in the back seat of a car about why cannabis is not legal and what it would take for cannabis to be legal. And I remember the conversation centered around just believing that the government needed to find a way to tax cannabis. So
you were thinking this at the age of 15?
Yes, because the individual whose car we was in was a senior. So of course we had that older mindset being pushed down on us. So
awesome.
At the same time I was being introduced to cannabis, I was also being introduced to the possibility that one day it would be legal. So that was actually the first step I took, was seeing an opportunity, recognizing the opportunity and realizing that the day could come where I could be positioned correctly to make the most of it. How that has transpired to where I am today, or my relationship with cannabis today, I've had a unique relationship with cannabis. I've gotten in my fair share of trouble with it, but I've always kept my eye on the prize. So today, my relationship with cannabis is specifically focused on getting into the legal market and putting my team in the best position possible to be successful. In the interim, I have been working in IT and the consulting industry to gain the experience necessary to be successful in cannabis.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
I feel like I think you have such a big story, and I think we can go on for like hours.
Oh, definitely.
So tell us about your journey and how you transitioned from the legacy market into the regulated industry, and how your strategy and mindset helped to navigate through that whole transition.
Yeah, so at the same time that I was introduced to cannabis at the age of 15, seeing the opportunity, part of seeing that opportunity for the future was also seeing the opportunity in the present. And I saw the interest that my friends and associates had in cannabis, so I positioned myself to be the individual that they went to whenever they wanted cannabis. So because I started essentially selling to my friends, that kept me in the industry for a long time, because I didn't have any contention or additional added risk with people I didn't know. Now, that all changed when I went to college because I'm going to school with individuals that I'm meeting for the first time. So I did start to get in trouble when I was in college. I went to a school that was a dry campus. So they had strict rules in place around liquor. So anything that was happening with cannabis was going to be, that much worse. In college, I sold liquor and cannabis to students. There were occasions where professors were buying liquor off of me. I was able to get an internship, go into the corporate industry, but I came in through law firms, which have partnership through their attorneys. So one thing I was able to identify is that law firms do not drug test as most organizations do because of that partnership that is established between the firm and the attorneys, and knowing that you really can't drug test part of your employment population and not the rest.
So not to cut you off, but how did you find that out?
I found that out because they never drug tested me. So truth be told, I didn't even know that, the internship I was pursuing and the job that I was going to be working was even at a law firm. I was looking for a sales position at Aflac, if we're being 100% honest.
Yeah.
But, this world is all about who you know. And so someone in my network was a manager at a law firm and made me and my fraternity brothers apply for an internship there just because it had already been a rolling theme. I got the internship. And after 30 days, I realized they hadn't drug tested me. However, I got a call from HR. In the cannabis industry now, one of the things we're working on is allowing people to get their badges so that they can work until their background check comes back. Right now, that's not an option for the cannabis industry, but that's the option that allowed me to get into the legal industry. So I was working for 30 days, then my background check came back and I had to go to HR. And that 30-day window of them seeing my work ethic, seeing the product I produced, etc., allowed them to look past my cannabis arrests and,
Awesome.
Keep my employment.
That's amazing.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So you started the internship after the 30 days. They saw your background. They approved your background regardless because of your work ethic. What happened after that?
After that, I finished out the 3-month internship, and the following summer I had other plans, and they called me back and asked me to come back for a second summer. I had to stay in school the extra semester because I went to a small school. They didn't offer the same classes in the spring and the fall. And I had a double minor in sales and computer science. So I didn't want to be in a position where I went to school, I did an internship for the summer. Then I had to go find a part-time position because I had still a semester left, and then graduate and go find a career. And this is in 2007. So right around the time when the subprime mortgage crisis in hindsight hit. So at the time I made a proposal to the CIO for a part-time position so that when I graduated, I could just go look for the entry-level position to start my career. And they came back and told me that they would give me the part-time plus full-time employment. The subprime mortgage crisis hit and they kept their word. So because they kept their word, I was able to buy my first property maybe 9 months later.
So were you
Bought his
hired back as
first
an
property.
intern and then you bought your first property?
I was hired so what the law firm did is they kept me on my intern hourly rate. I think it might have been $11 an hour for both my internship and my part-time position. And then in the part-time position, they worked it out with me so that, I could still go to classes, come in certain days. I just had to hit 20 hours. However, I made it up. But then when they came back, they offered me a full-time position, which put me on salary. And then law firms have retirement accounts, but they also have pensions. So then you have to usually be at a firm maybe 3 years to get fully vested in the pension. So they grandfathered my start date to when my first summer was at the internship and put me on salary. So at
Gotcha.
that point, besides the low salary, I mean, I was sitting pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And what type of law were you working for, or law firm were you
Well, this was a
working for?
corporate law firm. So this law firm had, at the time, I believe, over 16 international offices, with Chicago being the headquarters. And so, yeah, it's a huge law firm. They do a lot of corporate law, litigation. So
Got it.
So while working for the law firm, were you doing anything cannabis related yet?
I was still selling cannabis to my friends, still smoking. And really, at this time, what I realized was that I was going to go into project management. I had already made my decision. I was going to go into project management. And at the time, the internship I was doing and the position I held was a quality assurance analyst. So essentially, I was working with IT application owners to make sure that their applications performed the way that they expected them to. And if they didn't, I worked with them to identify the issue and correct it. So there was a high level of attention to detail that was needed. But I knew I wanted to go into project management. Quality assurance is a stepping stone to project management. Really, the role that I saw in between the two was business analytics. So what I did is I went back to school and got my MBA with a concentration in project management. And then I left the first law firm and went to another law firm as a business analyst.
Nice.
I could have taken a project management position, but I wanted to make sure that I learned all of the skills necessary to effectively run a project or program. So I went for a business analyst position to make sure that I truly understood how to analyze a business.
Yeah. That's very clever.
Very. You had a very strategic plan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to be.
Yeah.
We're playing chess.
Exactly. Yes.
And it seems like you've been strategic from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Like from that moment when you were 15 years
15,
old
yep.
to going to college and then the law firm. So being in corporate and then now being in corporate consulting in the IT space, tell us how you've been able to bridge that gap. So, you were selling cannabis, still being like street level, and how do you bridge the gap between that and maybe going into transition of how Winter Haze started?
So when I was young, maybe 6, 7 years old.
So we're going way back.
Yeah, we're going way back. I had an experience with an older individual, maybe in their 60s, which led to me saying to my mother that I didn't like being black. And so her response was just asking me why. And I explained to her, how I was feeling because of my interaction with this older individual. And so she told me that being black is the best thing that ever happened to me because it always will put me in the position where I can prove someone wrong. That is honestly the foundation for everything.
Wow.
Or the way I move. So I know when I walk into a room dressed a certain way that people are going to develop a certain opinion about me or think something, whatever it may be about me, just because of the way the world works. But I usually walk into the room dressed a certain way or whatever intentionally. So I've usually played a lot of things out in my mind before they've actually happened, and then I just pivot to what is actually happening. So the transition from corporate to, the legal cannabis industry, or the transition from, the legacy market, all of that is really about finding a transferable skill set. And my transferable skill set was project management. So I knew in the back of my mind, everything I learned in corporate America would put me in the position to then go start my own business and do it that much better. Because if I did it that well for you to have a successful business and make your money, then I already know I'm going to put even more time and energy into making something happen for myself.
That's right. That's right.
So project management is everything for me.
Awesome. And so that is actually a great transition, you starting your business. So can you tell us more about the business that you started?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier how I bought my first property shortly after I got on salary with the first law firm. If I fast forward to maybe around 2013, 2014, I go into consulting for the first time, and I was working projects for large pharmaceutical companies that really led to me only being in Chicago or Illinois 4 to 6 days a month. So after about 4 or 5 months of doing that, I realized that it would probably be in my best interest to rent out my condo. So I didn't want to rent it out under my name, because if someone got in there and pulled a slip and fall, they could come for all of my personal stuff. So I created a real estate company, went through the whole process, got an EIN number, set up bank accounts, credit cards, all that, because I knew it usually takes a business 5 years to establish credit. So why not just do it now, even though I had no idea what I was going to do with this real estate company? It was just to protect myself when renting it out. So that company was established in 2013. And, you know, I have a younger brother and a father who's both of their names begin with a W. And so does mine. So when thinking about always knowing that I wanted to go into cannabis and just waiting for the right opportunity, and truth be told, I was actually planning to move to another state to pursue this until things started to pick up in Illinois. I wanted to keep the W theme, but there aren't that many attractive names that begin with a W. So I decided to pick a name that would allow me to capture the environment that we would be operating in. While I'm originally from Philadelphia, I grew up in Illinois. I'm committed to Illinois. I'm the only member besides my brother that resides in the Midwest.
Oh, wow.
The rest of our family is all on the East Coast. See a lot of people leave Chicago or Illinois, and one of the first things out of their mouth is usually it's too cold or I'm tired of the winter.
Yeah.
You know, all those good
I probably
things.
said that
Yep.
before.
I think we've
Yeah.
all probably said it. And so I knew I wanted to capture the essence of the weather, my name, but then also make it in a way where you can put a product or even a lifestyle around it. So I knew I wanted to go with the name Winter, but I hadn't thought of any other aspect of it. So my best friend's father is a police sergeant, and so that is what led me to identifying the city I would operate in, because I needed to have a relationship with the police. As crazy as that sounds.
Not crazy at all.
No, that makes sense.
Needed to have a relationship with the police, because at the end of the day, while this is still a legal industry, or I'm trying to get into a legal industry, it's still cannabis. It's still perceived as drugs. People still, you know, do crazy things. So that's what pushed me to the area that I decided to reside in or put the business in. And when going into that city, you know, there's a point where you're going down 55, you know, turns into 74, and you're about to cross into the Murray Baker Bridge. And the mist that comes up off of that bridge just reminded me of Haze. And you talk about Haze, it goes back to the, you know, the hippie scene. So it was real easy to take the weather, the name, and combine it with, you know, almost pay tribute or homage to those who introduced us to what it is we're pursuing at such a large level. And so that's how the name came about. Honestly, I was nervous. I thought other people were going to hate it. And before anyone ever commented on it, I saw my team like posting it and all that good stuff. So I knew they bought into it. And
You're like, we have a
the
winner.
rest is
All
history.
right.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So what is Winter Haze?
So Winter Haze is a 100% Black-owned, socially equitable cannabis company that is focused on being the gold standard in Illinois. And when we say that, we don't mean solely having the best products. We mean having the most cohesive team. We want to have the best processes. We want to lead by example. We want to show the industry that we have the skill set, the experience, the desire, but also the business acumen and open-mindedness to learning what we don't know. At the end of the day, this is all about strategic partnerships. We're going to, if we're fortunate enough to get licenses, we're going to compete against all those who are in the industry with us.
Right.
But at the same time, we'll probably do something better than others will, and they'll probably do something better than what we will. And there's that sweet spot you have to find between being able to work with those you compete with and then just competing against them because it's business. And if we think about it, no matter how many people come into the cannabis industry, and we can use Illinois as an example, there will come a point where only those who hold licenses will be able to relate to some of the issues or experiences that others are having, and those are usually those who share a common interest, and in this case, it would be members of the Illinois cannabis industry. So it's all about strategic partnerships.
Yeah. And so I know with Winter Haze, like you applied for like the cultivation and the infusion license. So how was your experience with being a social equity applicant?
Yeah, it's been rough from the perspective of just, knowing that it's such a heavy lift to get into this industry, and knowing that so many of us put, our life savings, just everything we had into this, and there's this continued delay. It doesn't matter who you are, if you're a social equity applicant or not. Pursuing these licenses was going to be something that took a lot of time, energy, and money.
And lots of money.
Lots of money. So there's just a certain level of respect that I think all applicants are due, for, if nothing else, going through the application process. I heard someone say early on that they made it through the dispensary application process, and that in itself, was something that should be acknowledged. And until you go through one of these applications, you have no idea of how true that statement is. So definitely.
Okay. So what other challenges do you face besides the hurdles of the state that has been presented like across the board?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that should be acknowledged is that the delay by the state is a trickle-down effect. So the delay in awarding licenses, in some instances, it can cause a team to struggle to hold the team together. In other instances, people tie down property. So trying to retain that property so that you don't put yourself in a position where you spend additional funds on something you already spent it on, like locking down another property and then doing a floor plan, access plan, security overlay for that new property. It's difficult to raise funds with investors when you've submitted an application, you know a decision is going to be made at some point in the future, but you don't know if you're going to be included in, on the right side of that decision. So it's hard to talk money with people when you don't have anything tangible in hand. And then, in our instance, we're trying to lay the foundation for what we're going to do in the future. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're going through a property acquisition phase right now, which, again, it's very difficult to navigate because commercial property is so expensive. But at the same time, anything you can do now will make the items or events you need to focus on when you get a license that much easier. So it's just been difficult, across the board, but it's a good test to how committed you are to what it is that you're pursuing. And so while it's been difficult, it's nothing that, we've grown tired of, or nothing that we don't have the energy or bandwidth to continue. It's just something that we hope we can all come together and find a way to move this forward, because dispensary applicants have been waiting for a year, essentially. And in a month or two, you can say the same for all the manufacturing applicants, and that's just difficult.
Yeah, so based on that whole experience, What do you think people should focus on now, especially fellow social equity applicants who are kind of just sitting in limbo and not knowing what to do? And maybe, they are not as strategic as you may be. Their mindset is, not wasn't really prepared to go through all these hurdles. What should they do now? What should they focus on?
Yeah. I think the first step is making sure you still have your team together. And if not, start to identify, the positions or team members that you may need to replace, because for whatever reason, you could have had someone committed to your team, and this delay caused them to have to pursue another opportunity with another organization in another state. So I would definitely first make sure that you have your team in place, and then go through the process of at least speaking to, interviewing, reviewing materials from the different businesses that you're going to need to rely on to be successful. So there's nothing wrong with talking to banks and trying to identify your banking partner now, even setting up your accounts. Banks that are going to bank cannabis, they'll put your account in a pre-licensed state right now until you get a license. So that's one thing you can just already have completed. Start to, if you haven't already, interview general contractors, identify who your general contractor would be if you are awarded a license so you can move forward. You're going to want to get on their schedule sooner than later, because at the end of the day, they're just going to book up as many people as possible, because they know at a minimum 75 dispensary licenses are going to come out, and at least 80 manufacturing when you combine the craft grower and the infuser. So you don't want to be in a situation where you have a license and now all the general contractors are telling you they can't get to your project for 1 to 2 months, and you're under a deadline to be operational of 6 months. So there are certain things that you can do if you have an attorney that helps you with your application. And if you don't have an attorney, you should definitely find one, get your general counsel in place. You're going to want to have you can start working on employment agreements to have in place for your team, confidentiality agreements. You're going to start sending your information out to these general contractors, benefits, insurance providers, whoever, to review your information and consider onboarding you, considering the industry that you're in. You're going to want them to protect your information, or you're going to have that extra layer of security blanket. So having a NDA or a confidentiality agreement drafted up and ready to go would be beneficial. We want to offer, the best benefits possible to our employees. So that includes everything from 401k, health insurance, all those good things. So we've already started those conversations. We already have narrowed things down and, pretty much know who we're going to go with. So there are many things that you can do while you wait. And I think at this point, everyone should want to do as many of those things, assuming that they have the funds, the backing, the bandwidth, the time. Because again, when these licenses come down, it's just going to be crazy. People are going to have questions. General contractors, architects, lawyers are going to get even more busy than what they are today. So definitely anything you can do to now to prepare for tomorrow is beneficial. Some people may say, well, you don't know if you're going to get a license. But depending on how committed you are to getting in the industry, you can know if you don't get a license if you would apply again. So there are certain things that you can do to prepare for the future if you are put in a position of having to apply again for round 2 and you decide to go that route.
Yeah. And so what do you say to those? Because I'm sure you have a lot of people reaching out to you, as we do too, where there's other people are trying to, they want to get into the cannabis industry and they want to apply for cultivation license. Like what are the first steps that they should do?
The first thing anyone needs to do is, take that time to themselves to see if this is something that they really are dedicated to. You don't want to waste your time and money, and you definitely want to waste the time and money of other individuals. If you are talking about pursuing a license, and your name is going to be on that application, or you're going to be involved with putting that application together, you're essentially taking a leadership role for a vision or company that you plan on, being at the head of sometime in the future, whether that is a one-headed monster, a three-headed monster. So there's a certain level of responsibility that comes with pursuing a license and putting a team together and then carrying that forward. I think one reason we've been so successful is because everyone on the team has been committed to making this happen, no matter the cost. So everyone is dedicated and ready to go. I would tell someone that wants to pursue these licenses, you have to consider all aspects. Again, we said earlier, we're playing chess. So, do you have enough money to, put together a strong application? Do you then have enough money to show the liquid asset requirement? Regardless of if you do it or if you don't today, you can go out and get it. But if you don't have it, you need to take that time into consideration to position yourself well. There are many ways you can get into industry and not necessarily have a license or be plant touching. I think the thing people forget is that the cannabis industry is just like any other industry from a support aspect.
Right.
Still going to need IT experts, still going to need your HR experts or staffing services. You're going to need your media, your PR. There are just so many things out there that can lead to you getting into the cannabis industry, that you don't have to necessarily pursue the license or, the expensive route. You can stage it. So I think the thing that we saw with the cannabis industry, right, is that there's a good chance that in my lifetime and in the lifetime of all my teammates, we will never see another industry so promising in its infancy state like we do the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
So for us, understanding that is part of what led us to pursuing these licenses and wanting to get into the industry. It's being able to get in at the ground level and set those standards before there are too many standards in place that need to be reverted and then updated. And someone said the next generation of leaders are going to come out of the cannabis industry, and I truly believe that because we are all getting in so early on, and have such involvement in a prominent role in the legislation and all the things that are coming out of not only just Illinois, other states, that, again, you could make the argument if you're not in politics to some degree, you're probably not in cannabis. So definitely.
Thank you for that. That was really helpful. I think you guys are going to learn a lot more from Winston outside of this podcast, but even just in these last 30 minutes, I'm sure that you guys have learned a lot, because I know I have. And I like what you said earlier about first things first, step back, take some time to just really think about how committed you're willing to be, and just not get too eager and excited about joining a booming industry, but really taking that time and, ask yourself, what are you willing to do to get there, right? So you've been making a lot of moves in Illinois. You said you're committed to Illinois. What do you see on the horizon for cannabis in Illinois?
Cannabis in Illinois. I see Illinois, even though, the awarding of licenses, specifically around the dispensaries, I think the word that everyone's using is a debacle. So since it was a debacle, I think it initially kind of put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially outside of Illinois, because Illinois had been touting so much and so often that we were going to be, the leader in social equity. And it just, at least in the initial announcement, it didn't play out the way everyone wanted or anticipated it would. But based off of the many groups that have been formed and are coming together to collaborate, and all the members of the General Assembly that, this is now on their radar, and the things that, that they're pushing for, I see this being corrected. And hopefully licenses can be awarded sooner rather than later. There have been a lot of discussions around the lessons learned. And again, as a project manager, that's good to see, because there's always a lesson to be learned. And you usually do that at the end of a project so that when you go into your next project, you know, things can be a little smoother. I see that happening with Illinois. I think this first round was rough, as even though it's not what everyone anticipated or wanted to see. I think, the fact that it happened this way, it shouldn't be too surprising because it was a first go. But those conversations around the lessons learned have been taking place. So I see the next round being smoother. I see things being injected to take away some of the concern that people have and reinstilling that confidence that's needed to have a second round in the future, a third round, etc. So from a sales perspective, it looks like the numbers have been coming back higher than what anyone anticipated. So that's good to see. I think at the end of the day, Illinois will be the leader that it set out to be when compared to other states. And I really think that's going to be really due to the work that the existing operators have done, the legislators have done, and then the applicants have done, because you have people that, again, gave their whole life to applying, and instead of saying, I'm done with this, it's too messy or whatever, people are still showing up to figure out how can we work through this. So that commitment from all parties involved is there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's so many takeaways from this entire episode, like so many. And I love too that you talked about how, if you want to get into the cannabis industry, you don't have to be touching that plant, right? There's so many different assets. It's a brand new industry. And I think that's something that people, as soon as they think of cannabis, they're like, okay, I want to get that license. But like you said, what's your mission? What's the bigger purpose? And then finding that team too.
Yes.
So that I think that team is core to, all those things that you mentioned about, when they're waiting for that license, what they can be doing. And
Absolutely.
You obviously cannot be doing all that work alone. You need that core team to build your mission.
There has to be a high level of trust in the core team, because no one person can be everywhere they need to be, and things will fall out of the sky that need to be addressed. You can dot all your I's, cross all your T's. There is going to be a hiccup along the way in pretty much every process. We're talking about cannabis, pretty much the, most highly regulated industry. So you're now talking about, audits, right? And all those good things. So, auditors want to work with people that, are going to be in compliance.
Yep.
So
compliance is huge.
Right. So that's why it's good to see so many people respond to the deficiency notices and continue to show up to these conversations, because, the minute something comes back from a compliance standpoint and then someone turns their back on it saying, oh, I don't need to be worried about it. Well, you kind of just gave an excuse on why you shouldn't be in the industry.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for all the information that you've given us.
We have so much to talk about.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, we really appreciate your time.
Oh, no problem.
And you coming down to Chicago from Peoria. We really appreciate you. So tell the audience what you have going on, where they can find you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, let them know.
What I have going on, like I said, we're continuing to try to prepare as best possible, whether we get licenses awarded this round. If we don't, we're going to apply again in the future. So we're just continuing to prepare as if we'll be in the industry one day, whether that's 30 days from now or 1,000 days from now. We actually just found out short ago that we actually acquired one of our buildings. So that was exciting.
You heard that here. You heard that here.
Yeah, so definitely. So, as I said earlier, we're going through property acquisition, and we essentially just acquired half a block, so that's very exciting.
That's awesome.
Super exciting. Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
we look forward to all the big things that you're going to be doing here.
I appreciate
and
it.
we will be visiting you
For
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah, I'm in Peoria. Come
Yeah.
visit.
Thank you again, Winston.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for tuning into our show. Catch us next time on our next episode on March 17th. We want to say shout out to Canivision Global, Canivision Midwest, and our media crew, High Key Creative. Make sure you follow us on Hush Chicago. That's at hush_Chicago and canivision.il. So till next time, peace.
Bye, guys.